diazepam, Flomax, propofol. These were just some of the drugs that Michael Jackson was ingesting into his system. Why on earth was he doing this? Okay, why would anyone do this? All at the same time taking benzodiazepines and anesthetics that are meant for surgery and not meant for regular use. The myth back in 2010 was that he was just doing this for plastic surgeries, okay? He just wanted to look better and he overdosed. That was what everyone in the neighborhood and at school believed. That was it. You know, it was the same thing as the Marilyn Manson rib cage. I'm not even gonna get into that stuff, okay? But you know what I mean. And all of that is completely false. It is completely untrue. Yes, he had vitiligo. Yes, he had uh, this autoimmune disease that makes the skin pigmentation different and it makes it appear whiter. That is true. Okay, but we need to go back to the beginning. We need to go back to the beginning and discover the reason why he was taking all of these at the same time. Now, imagine it's 2009 and it's the spring of 2009 and he has this concert coming up and it's his comeback concert in London. 50 shows, tons of rehearsals, and he was supposed to do that all on his own. Okay, he is the main star. It's make it or break it for him because he was in so much debt and financial problems. He had eaten up into his savings. He had taken up a bunch of loans. He had invested into the Beatles catalog. He had no money left. This was it. He was dealing with tons of lawsuits. Back in 2005, he was having lawsuits, and some of these he was acquitted of. Others, not so much. But he was having tons and tons of problems and stress, which meant he could not sleep. He could not sleep. First of all, he could not sleep for days. Then he couldn't sleep for weeks. Eventually, he couldn't sleep at all. He could not sleep for the life of him. A court case actually even details that he reportedly didn't sleep for 60 days straight, which, I don't know how that's possible. By the third day or the second day, you even start getting micro sleeps. Your body starts putting you in sleep like whenever during the day at random moments. That's why you shouldn't drive a car. It's like you're not even there. You don't know what the heck's going on. And that's something that happens. But he could not sleep no matter what. And we're going to explore the reasons why, okay? But by April, May, people he was rehearsing with became very worried because he was erratic. He was like, let's do this show. And then all of a sudden he would just collapse and he would be exhausted. Okay, that's something that happens when you are dealing with high cortisol and stress. You feel wired and tired. You want to go, you're God, you're the best, everything's perfect, and then you're collapsing into sleep. That's something that happens with insomnia. And this just wasn't a regular case of insomnia, it was extreme insomnia because he could not sleep at all for the life of him. First of all, is the concerts, the lawsuits, the stress. But it wasn't just that, right? Because when you have insomnia, one of the main things, the advice is that you get up, you journal, and you do not try to fall asleep. You either fall asleep, but you accept that you might not. He could not accept that. He was so scared. He was very fearful of not being afraid to sleep, of not being able to sleep. So he contacted his doctor, and his doctor started treating him. Eventually, that regular treatment didn't work, so he gave him propofol. And propofol is not a sleeping medication. It is something that is given and administered in a hospital setting for putting the patient to sleep, but it's not real sleep, okay? It's shutting the brain off. It's basically like an induced coma because the brain doesn't get any REM sleep, your body is not sleeping, it just completely shuts off. It's you just retain some basic functions and that's it. And he started using that for sleep, which isn't really sleep. By that time, 2009, he was pale, frail, fragile, extremely tired. He looked disturbing, and that is the effect of a lack of sleep. These are the extreme effects of insomnia that you can see on a person. It's not just it's not plastic surgeries, it is the absolute detrimental effects that the music industry can have on a person. Entertainment industry can exploit and squeeze a person out to the point where that those effects of insomnia are visible on the person's face. So May, April, people were worried about him. June, he went up to his mansion in his uh, second floor bedroom. He went to sleep and he never woke up. This was after he complained about being unable to sleep and not feeling very good. And he administered propofol and he experienced cardiac arrest. So the detectives went up there. They noticed that to the left side of the bed, it looked like someone had laid there. They looked at all the toothpaste, the belongings, and eventually in the autopsy, they discovered all of these medications. They found out that he had a bruise on his left leg, nothing else that was suspicious, but the fact was the autopsy stated that his doctor basically committed homicide on him. 4 years is what he was sentenced to. Okay, but he only went to prison for 2 of those. But it was absolutely detrimental. The fact that he could not sleep completely destroyed his life at the end of this. Now, Michael Jackson was a very perfectionistic person. Everything had to be perfect. All the shows, all the music that he did had to be like every detail had to be top notch. And that was just his personality. He could not accept that he could not sleep. He was also a very anxious person. You could tell from his interviews where he details how his father chased him around the house and he was afraid of fall. He was afraid that he would be he was afraid for his life, basically. That's trauma that builds into anxiety. So when he was unable to sleep, he was anxious. He was afraid of not being able to ever fall asleep again. He had that belief and that fear, and that's what eventually became a vicious cycle. Okay, it became a cycle where he really could not fall asleep anymore. So, so he had rapid weight loss. He had chronic insomnia. He had chronic fatigue and stress. It was absolutely nightmarish what he went through. He had obsessive perfectionism, which was made worse by his cortisol and the fact that he couldn't sleep. And, you know, trying to sleep eventually led to his cardiac arrest. So it wasn't just drugs, okay? It was also the fact that his body completely shut down, complete systemic failure. Uh, his insomnia made him do extreme stuff. The pressure amplified his insomnia, and it was just a vicious cycle from there. So this really shows you how we take something for granted like sleep, and it's something that we're very rarely grateful for. It's something like breathing, and unless it goes away and a person doesn't have it anymore, it's not really appreciated anymore. But take that away from a person, and now sleeping is like the best thing ever, and it's something that becomes the thing that you want the most in the world. You would be willing to pay like $10,000 or more just to be able to sleep if you were never able to do it. And that really shows a perspective and a price on things that we take for granted and we don't really appreciate.